Think about the way therapy is portrayed in movies and TV. Generally, it's the protagonist who has to deal with some trauma from their past, and they come across a wise but tough therapist who makes them dig deep into their worst traumas, retrieving the memories until finally they get the whole picture and they're free. It's a very Hollywood kind of narrative, but it's not how the brain works, and it's not how trauma healing happens. Today's guest, Tom Zimmerman, has developed a method of FLASH, which originated in the world of EMDR, which is part of a whole series of new wave trauma treatments that uses the body and awareness and what we're increasingly finding out about the brain to dissect trauma memories and reintegrate them so that we can be fully present in the here and now and not stuck in a painful past. And the amazing thing about this, as you'll find out, is that it's democratic in that it's a methodology that we can do it for ourselves. It's something that every parent, teacher, manager, psychologist can easily develop a facility for and share it. And it's fun. The brain likes it. And that's where healing happens. So without further ado, Thomas Zimmerman, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
I discovered your work and what seemed to me to be sort of like a really cool, like secret place on the internet, your techniques for dealing with complex trauma. I can't remember where I first heard about it, but I went and I watched and I read some of the material, and this was like 2 or 3 years ago. And my first thought was, well, this is too good to be true.
It is. I mean, it really does. I mean, So the top line, the idea of like being able to heal trauma with remarkably little distress is pretty mind-blowing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then since then I've gotten very much into memory reconsolidation. So I've studied with Bruce Ecker, with Tori Olds. I studied with Alan Parry, and there's, the understanding of the underlying mechanism of memory reconsolidation, which I hope we'll get into because you have a very discerning understanding of what it is and how it works. And one of the things, it's still really early days to understand how it works, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Can you introduce yourself and
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. So I'm Tom Zimmerman. I'm a therapist in Ohio. I'm an EMDR therapist and trainer and consultant.
And what's that?
An EMDR?
Yeah.
What is EMDR? EMDR is a way to process trauma. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's about a 35-year-old way to process trauma, centered in noticing, centered in just slowing down, being present and noticing, allowing your nervous system to digest what you were too overwhelmed or too shut down or didn't have the information needed to digest at the time the experience happened. So EMDR is a pretty well-known, pretty popular, evidence-based way of processing trauma globally. So as an EMDR therapist, we also look for ways of helping people that aren't quite prepared for EMDR therapy, because EMDR has an admission cost. You have to be able to slow down, be present, and notice. And a lot of people with really bad trauma are pretty phobic of doing that. So that's when I discovered that there was this technique discovered by an EMDR therapist named Phil Manfield called FLASH. So I took a FLASH training and was pretty quickly blown away. But I was also struck. It struck me pretty quickly what was going on here. And it's very closely related to Bruce Ecker. It's very closely related to what's going on in neuroscience with the predictive mind, the idea that our brain is constantly issuing a large number of predictions about what it thinks is about to happen. And so that's kind of what got me out there kind of doing this work that you stumbled across and that I've been about. It's been really, really about understanding how people heal and how we can actually help make therapy or make therapeutic interventions or even make self-care practices better match the brain and nervous system that we have rather than the one we've thought we've had for the last 135 years.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Great. So I want to start maybe with EMDR,
Yeah.
which in itself, when I first read about it, thought like, how the heck did anyone come up with this? It
Yeah.
seems it's like such a bunch of random steps that you would put together. It
Yeah.
seemed like I didn't understand how it would work, but like there is a thing with the eye movements so that you're
Yeah.
sort of reliving old experiences while someone's guiding you to pay attention to certain things, right?
In some ways, but again, EMDR is unfortunately named because you can do EMDR all the time without doing eye movements at all. It's just we typically engage in some form of present-based left-right stimulation. That can be tapping, that can be headphones that beep, that can be you tapping your feet left and right, that can be devices that shake left and right. They're light bars that, so there are many, many ways to get that left-right stimulation. But essentially, right, EMDR sounds like a kind of hodgepodge of other psychotherapies, many of them kind of strange and woo-woo sounding. Kind of, it sounds like it came out of California, and it did.
Yeah.
So, but it is a remarkable way and to just simply heal. So EMDR therapists see people completely resolve things one memory at a time all day long for their careers. So it's an amazing way to work, but it's especially challenging for people who really struggle activating tolerably in a way that they can slow down, be present, and notice. And EMDR therapy kind of requires that you have the right answer already in you. It's almost the example I use is if you think of a memory when you're a kid and it's just really embarrassing and you go there and it's just so embarrassing. But yet there's a part of you that's like, dude, you were a kid. You were like 5. All 5-year-olds are ridiculous.
Uh-huh.
All 5-year-olds don't know. That disconnect, EMDR allows that to connect all day long. But it struggles when the 5-year-old is you. 5-year-old you is like, I'm so stupid. And like the grown-up parts of you are like, you were so stupid. So what do we do with people that don't have any kind of positive information or very, very little positive information, but have an enormous amount of trauma? And that's where flash approaches can come in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe describe what you learned from Phil Mansfield, because I know you've taken it in other directions and refined it based on memory reconsolidation and based on the work of Andy Clark and Lisa Feldman Barrett.
So I took a training with Ricky Greenwald's team, who is one of the people that also does flash trainings. And again, flash emerged as a way to take heat out of memories. It was understood as this way to kind of take heat out of memories. But it seemed pretty clear to me that if you do flash well, it fully permanently resolves them. Like for the rest of your life, it will always be experienced as over. And the moment I realized that, the moment I saw that, the moment I had dozens of clients show up fully resolving things without distress in session after session after session, 70 of them in a row, doing it, 70 sessions in a row, then I had to realize, oh my goodness, this isn't a resource. This isn't a resource. This is actually processing trauma, using every metric that you would consider that memory resolved, however you resolve it. So it also seemed very clear to me initially that Bruce Ecker explains this very, very well, right? So the lens I take now is kind of starts with predictive mind as kind of the broadest level of abstraction, and then Bruce Ecker. And I gotta tell you, what I would probably say is predictive mind up here across like many branches of neuroscience. But Bruce Ecker's on to something, right? Bruce Ecker's been saying the same thing, that if we think about it, if humans had any common sense, we would have intuited a long time ago, right? Bruce Ecker shouldn't have to keep saying this 785 times a year. He shouldn't. And the idea is we heal and we learn across prediction error. We heal and we learn across what Bruce Ecker calls juxtaposition, right? We can do that. So Flash does that.
So maybe give an example of that, because I've interviewed Bruce on this podcast and a few other memory reconsolidation folks, but not a lot. So I think it'd be helpful, just like what you mean or what he means by juxtaposition, prediction error.
Absolutely. And I want to be very clear, because in general, what Bruce Ecker is trying to resolve is not what I'm trying to resolve. Bruce Ecker is trying to resolve a whole belief about yourself all at once, right? So he's got to have a really strong juxtaposition for that. My clients, that's too big of a bite. So what are we trying to resolve? We're trying to resolve not even one memory in Flash. We're trying to resolve a tiny, tiny micro slice of a memory. So if in the memory your father's like, "You're so stupid," we're just getting this, just one little bitty tiny thing. So what I describe is like, it's like we're so used to thinking about a memory as being like a bowling ball that's either in awareness or not. You're either like touching it, it's either in working memory or not. And what Flash teaches us is that you can think about a memory and you can leave it in your brain and you can process a single bean in that bean bag at a time. So we look at a memory lightning fast. We get a tiny piece of it. We push it out of awareness. But since we brought it into working memory, our brain has to make predictions about it. When you bring something into working memory, your brain has to make predictions about it. And then I push it out of awareness so that it doesn't flood into your body and cause your brain to make a whole bunch of predictions about that stuff, right? So we touch it the way you touch a hot skillet with a wet finger. And we push it out of awareness. And then we have back-to-back experiences in YouTube, for instance, of watching golden retrievers jump up and down, playing with tennis balls in fields of hay, right? And you're having an experience in your nervous system that disconfirms the expectation, not in the memory, but in that little bitty micro slice of it, right? So it's kind of like...
And the expectation is that, to some extent, like, this is still happening, therefore my body has to flood with all of the processes and chemicals of stress, of fight or flight, to protect myself, to hide.
Yes, but that's what always happens. But what's happening in Flash is different than that. Thus the prediction error, right? So in Flash, we get such a small piece of the memory that your brain's like, this might not be safe. This is from territory that's normally not safe. But look, I'm having an experience of safety. So one of the things we know about trauma, and one of the things we know about a predictive mind, is that when we get near trauma, a lot of our brain's largely unconscious version of attention gets heavily weighted toward the trauma. And when that happens, we have the feeling, the affect, the worries, the thoughts, all of that stuff from the trauma. And that makes perfect sense, because those are aversive. Pay attention to this. This is important. Don't do that. Avoid that, right? So what we're doing in Flash is we're bringing a tiny piece of the memory into working memory, an uncomfortably small piece. We have to prepare people to microactivate. It's not what they're used to. And then we push it away, and then we do another thing that we never ever do when we handle trauma, which is we immediately engage in something pleasant, which is letting us see, experientially, letting our brains see that bad thing isn't happening right here, right now. Because puppies are, something else is. So this is, I'm going to argue that this is how we heal, period. When we heal, it's also how we learn. It's also how we grow. It's how we, so these processes of how we heal, the core elements of it are central to everything a brain does, right? I mean, our brain seems to be governed by model, prediction error, and weighting, or some version of attention. What are we attending to? And in all of the transformational trauma therapies, all of the therapies that have a really good chance of resolving a memory in a session or two permanently, the rest of your life, they all involve activation, and they differ in what I'm having you notice. All of them, right? So Flash is just having you notice something that's generating a very clear, very explicit disconfirmation of what your brain's expecting and what a lot of your predictions are.
Right. So I'd love to tie this process to like the difference between what you're doing and what Bruce Ecker is doing.
Yeah.
In terms of right, like the trauma that people arrive with or that they live with could be something like I never speak up in meetings and I've lost opportunities and or I keep sabotaging relationships. So, right, most people don't come because of a particular memory or set of memories, although, from PTSD, there's certain things that of course can, but, like most of the people that I deal with as a coach, I deal with human beings and we're all traumatized to some extent.
Yeah.
And it's usually sort of behavioral or emotional. And I'm curious how Flash ties that. If you start talking to someone and then shift from that into like, let's find a specific memory.
Yeah.
And how do we know that that's the memory or that's a memory that relates to this?
Yeah. So I work with people with really, really significant lifelong trauma, and even healthy people. What they're presenting with the symptoms of learning. They're presenting with the sequela of learning, right? So we are surrounded by culture. So even healthy people, many of their presenting issues are the byproduct of learning, and a lot of it is adverse learning. So how do you find an individual memory that's relevant? Bruce Ecker's pretty good at that with relatively healthy people, finding a memory that like really does capture this belief about yourself. And then they construct an experience that really is a strong disconfirmation of that. So you activate something difficult and you sit with an experience that is different than the expectation in the bad memory. What's different with Bruce Ecker is trying to change a whole neighborhood all at once, right? A whole belief about yourself all at once. My clients have 55,000 memories, right? That may underlie the belief what I want doesn't matter, right? So I can't find a representative one there and process it, and then that belief's going to get better. Do you know what I mean? It's going to take months and months of work with people with complex trauma, because there's 158,000 hours in childhood, and trauma isn't meant to be updated easily. So I'm in Flash. I'm painting with a very, very small paintbrush, a little extra fine paintbrush. We're updating not your whole schema all at once, but we're updating a little piece of a horrible memory, and then the next piece and the next piece. And by the end of the session, you've had new learning that has come from the resolution of that memory. New learning that you'll have in you for the rest of your life, that your brain will instantly use and propagate through your nervous system, that's going to ooch you toward health. So complex trauma is different than working with like people. Let me put it this way. People don't come to me ever and say, hey, I feel like I'm not leveling up to the next level of consciousness fast enough. You know,
Yeah.
it'll come. They come. They come with a dumpster fire, right? They come with really life having been awful, 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 awful. So, yeah. And again, as a trauma therapist, particularly with really, really significant lifelong trauma, every chance I get, I want to say this is not a brief approach to therapy. Recovery, if childhood was 158,000 hours, recovery is going to take some time. It's going to be your life's work, right? And it can get better, much better in the short term. But there's not a 2-week program for the recovery of complex trauma. And there shouldn't be, right? There shouldn't be.
Right. I mean, that's one of the things that I thought about when I, discovered what you have been calling four blinks, what you're now calling predictive processing flash, is, my God, this is so amazing because it can really democratize therapy.
Yeah.
And this is really dangerous because someone's going to find this, repackage it, and market it way better than you or I could, and present it as the 10-minute cure. And, and people are going to be misled about its, its global efficacy.
Yeah. And I don't know that we have any control over any of that. But my take is we've been trying to heal ourselves as a species forever, right? If we kind of think about it, I mean, I can reflect on my life and see so many things that I've done to try to heal myself, to make sense of my past, to carry this in a more tolerable way, to love somebody, to try to make myself whole, to love myself, to try to make myself whole, to all these different ways that we've been trying to heal ourselves. And Flash works very, very well in therapy, in groups, in individual sessions, and it works very, very well as a self-administered exercise. So I can only control what I do. And I have no doubt that we need to learn how to teach it well, because AI is probably going to be teaching it to us 2 years from now. And
Right.
it's okay. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that would the one of the other things that I thought. So I watched many, many hours of you teaching on YouTube, and I want people should find your YouTube channel, because the generosity with which you share this with the world, borders on the messianic. Like, here, take this. We need it. We need it. And I attended a live class, and I've been practicing with some clients who have been kind enough to let me do this with them. And there's a way in which it's very formulaic.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like this is kind of a cheat code. Like, I kind of want to keep this to myself and just be amazing.
Yeah.
And also, you caution about, certain things that you have to pay attention to that could go wrong. It's actually extremely subtle. And I'm finding that, after 3 or 4 sessions, I've got the script down. I can say, catch it, container it, push it far away. Like, I can say things, and yet the skill is really coming from noticing and being aware when there's activation, how much, being able to halt the process and explore what's actually going on. So on one sense, it's so easy a child could do it, and an AI could probably do it. On the other hand, this really is a very human interaction and relationship that's on offer.
Yeah. And it is deep. It works because it's non-intuitive. I mean, again, so many things that we've done for all of our lives to survive have become intuition. We just do it reflexively, instinctively. Plus, the cultures that wound us fill us with intuition about what we're allowed to count as wounding, what we're allowed to, how we should heal, right? What counts as wounding, how we should heal. And they, of course, construct obstacles to healing. So the hardest part in teaching anybody Flash is that you can't do what you always do when you activate a little piece of trauma. You have to do something different, which is why I'm instructing over and over and over to remind you to do the thing. It's like a car where if you want to go left, you have to turn right. Do you know what I mean? That just doesn't fit. And if you want to turn right, you have to press the gas pedal. It's like we have to rewire. We have to rewire what we do when we try to heal, because what you need to survive requires one set of intuition. But what we need to heal is going to require a different set of intuition. They're different skill sets. They're toward a different end. So it's really hard. It's really hard when, especially in therapy, when we've been told that you have to come to therapy, told by Freud and Breuer 135 years ago, you have to come to therapy, have a certain type of catharsis with it. Well, what if you don't? What if you don't? What if you can heal watching babies laughing on YouTube? How elegant and how democratizing, how compatible with the Western ethos. If you were to put this, I jokingly say that if Flash were a restaurant, it'd be right next to a Taco Bell or a, you know what I mean? It's the kind of thing that can be everywhere and accessible. And it is the kind of thing that I believe has the potential to rescue ourselves as a species.
Yeah, and so help people understand the difference between watching fun videos to distract ourselves. Most of us have an experience of just scrolling.
Yeah.
I've gotten into, I've decided to go to learn, practice rucking, sort of walking with heavy weights on my back. And for the last 2 days, I've been watching video after video of people reviewing backpacks. And
Yeah.
for me, that's like such a guilty pleasure. And it's just, when I let go of the guilt, it's just so much fun. Oh, look at this one, and look at these are Velcro, and this is,
Yeah.
and to me, that's escapism. So what's the difference between me doing that and having people in a Flash session watching their guilty pleasure videos that put them in a good mood?
Yeah. Well, from that aspect of it alone, not much. But what's different is the other things I'm having you do. So, by the way, if you're watching a video on YouTube and it's funny and engaging and beautiful, whatever, that is a dissociative experience. You are kind of going into that video, having an experience in that video that isn't really connected to what's happening right here, right now, in your room, in your environment. So that part is very compatible. It's the other things I'm asking you to do. So I'm asking you to think about, check a memory lightning fast and bring a tiny, tiny piece of it into focus and then push that out of focus. So you don't do that when you're watching your bag videos, but if you did, you'd be able to heal. Does that make sense? So what happens is we have all of this stuff that is in awareness, generating large numbers of predictions, and our body's all over the place. And then we do distraction. We're not microprocessing a memory. So what Flash does, and again, what all the transformational trauma therapies do, is they ask you to focus on purpose in very specific places and in very specific ways and in very specific times. So we're using the thing that humans do more than they sleep, which is looking at a screen, right? We're using the dissociative experience of looking at a screen to heal a micro slice of a memory at a time until the full memory resolves. So you're doing half of it when you're engaging in your backpack videos, but you're not micro-activating and doing the other parts of it. And if you did, that memory would resolve with a great deal of reliability and predictability.
So Yes, you said there's 158,000 hours in childhood, and
Yeah.
the example you gave, what I want doesn't matter. So, someone could have thousands of hours of tape ready to play that would
Yeah.
prove that to them, that that this is implicit learning,
Yeah.
and that you have them, and they say, oh, I remember this one time where we were at the game and I wanted to go get a grape soda, and blah blah blah, and it becomes this sort of big fight with dad, and he takes me
Yeah.
out, and the whole thing is like, what's the relationship of that to the other 9,000
Yeah.
hours that are similar?
Yeah. So once we've done Flash for a little while on a few targets, I want to start floating it back to big things. And the big things, which tend to be representative, very often first and worst, are very representative in how our minds hold things. Okay? So when you resolve, if you have thousands of memories that support a particular belief, if you can process the first, it may resolve many, 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 many others that we never have to touch because new learning happens.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we know about the predictive mind is that new learning causes updates that trickle through the whole rest of your brain and the whole rest of your system. So we're causing very important, very relevant new learning. And it's not going to be, after we work on that first memory, it's not going to be that what I believe now, what I want matters. Not with complex trauma. With a relatively healthy person, absolutely. With someone with complex trauma, that memory, you look at that memory and you will believe very strongly, if that's the right cognition, what I want mattered, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll believe that, right? But related to the whole rest of your life, what you'll probably believe is it's easier for me to believe that what I want might matter, but I'm not there yet. So we work on more memories.
Uh-huh.
So again, I have clients that say, oh, we're working one memory at a time. Well, you better plan to live 487 years because I've got a lot of them. Well,
Uh-huh.
no. We're working on representative memories. And when representative memories resolve, generalization occurs, which means that lots of other learning happens as a byproduct of this learning. They get updated,
Uh-huh.
potentially dozens and dozens of other experiences.
Gotcha. So one thing that I learned from Bruce Ecker is that it doesn't take much to disconfirm,
That's
right?
true.
When you put them both right next to each other,
Yep.
and you have one memory of yourself mattering, or a reinterpretation of that story, you go, oh my gosh, I was a little kid. Of course, what I wanted mattered. Or, oh, that person over there, I saw that they whatever that very often or sometimes a single disconfirmation can undo what he calls the schemas, this entire way of looking at
Yep.
yourself or the world. So does
Yeah.
that sometimes happen with
Yep.
predictive processing?
Absolutely. But this is very important. I think Bruce Ecker is working with healthier people than I am. Does that make sense? Because you're just not going to unlock a schema that's built upon tens of thousands of hours of horribly averse learning with new learning that only lasts a few minutes. Does that make sense? It's probably just a philosophical difference. But what I've been focused on isn't relatively healthy people. Flash works great for relatively healthy people. And in a few very easy sessions, you can probably completely unload their traumatic experiences from the past, and they can go out and live a beautiful, wonderful, elegant life. But what Flash does is, and its real importance and its real utility, is that Flash can touch where other things don't. Coherence therapy may not be that great for borderline tendencies. It just might not be. Flash is pretty awesome for clients that have those struggles, right? So Flash's utility is if this is a way, because it's built, it's kind of, at least the version that I teach is built around an understanding of what a brain is and how it learns and how it heals. We all need to be doing this. We would need to teach this to our children and our parents and our grandparents, and right. We need this, right. We need ways of healing and reconciling ourselves with ourselves. So. Yes, but I'm also, I have a bias. And again, even predictive processing suggests that if you have an enormous amount of learning, that learning isn't meant to be updated easily, right? Because we need to give it the right type of sensory disconfirmation. We need to give it the right type. We need to give it a very compelling, present-based reason to update the little piece of the model that you have of yourself in the world.
Right.
And these little updates can ooch toward big changes, really big life schema changes in a little bit of time. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I'm wrestling with in Andy Clark's book, The Experience Machine, about I think his most recent book about the brain and predictive processing, is that one of the things he says is that our brains are updating all the time. Like that's their one of their main jobs. And I think, I've thought of this for a while as sort of Bayesian updating, where you get, things keep happening and you get more and more confident in your predictions. But like, I don't feel like he really goes into the trauma literature in a way that was satisfying to me. So when, I was reading that, I was studying Bruce Ecker, they didn't really talk to each other. I found on your YouTube channel a discussion of predictive processing, a book club with that. And I was like, okay, someone's putting this together for me. What is it about trauma that makes the brain stop updating?
Yeah. Because in order to update, you have to be present for what's happening now. Remember that in a predictive mind, you've got the generative model of the world, like the experiences of everything you've been through. You have the large flow of predictions that your brain is making, like potentially hundreds of thousands of them a second, about what it's about, what it thinks it's about to experience, or what it's about to sense. And then you have this big flow of potential prediction error when the sensory information doesn't match the predictions, okay? But the important piece here is precision weighting. So one of the things we know about trauma is that when you get near it, precision weighting shifts very, very heavily toward that little piece of your generative model, right? So the way we update is by having new experiences, but trauma shifts your brain's version of attention so strongly toward itself that you can't have a disconfirming experience. And what all the transformational trauma therapies do, whether it's parts work or EMDR 2.0 or Flash or brain spotting, any of those things that may really shift the memory, or I would argue coherence therapy, what they all share, that I'm asking you to attend to something. I'm asking you to put your attention on something that is different than what your brain wants to be generating from you. So basically, long story short, you're here enough, you're engaged enough in the sensory present for prediction error to happen, because the default is sensory confirmation. Because if I'm pulled into the bad memory, my predictive mind is generating predictions of unsafety, which are showing up in my body, flooding me with a confirmation of it's like a microphone feedback loop. It's like a microphone speaker feedback loop. So the moment we're pulled in, we're not here in the present enough to have a disconfirming experience to allow it to update. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about what Andy Clark says about that. Not only is it not a disconfirmation, that our predictions often either color the world for us, so that
Absolutely.
if I feel like everyone hates me and I walk down the street, I will interpret faces
Yeah.
as full of venality,
Yes.
or if I will prepare myself to be hated and act in ways that will actually elicit those
Absolutely.
kinds of responses.
Yes. And if your brain is trauma haunted, it's filled with just awful, awful, awful experiences. And it's filled with the ruminations, because I can't stress how bad rumination is for us. Rumination is basically dissociating into your generative model and having a new confirming experience that experience is true. Our brain doesn't distinguish the way we like to think that it does between internal experiences and actual external re-traumatization. Rumination is bad for us with a predictive mind. It's just bad. And it generates even more experiences which go into your generative model that reinforce the predictions of the trauma. They just reinforce. So
we're just double dipping and triple dipping. If this was a research study, we would get fired, right? Because
we would get fired.
We're just taking the same evidence, replaying it over and over again, and counting each one as a new experience.
Exactly.
Wow.
And we don't have language for that. Does that make sense? We understand intuitively that rumination is bad, is not good for us. The predictive mind explains why. It explains why. And also, our best intuitions, this is why what we're doing here is completely different. Our best intuitions are to try to figure this out. Try to make sure there's not something. Right? Try to make sure that there's not something we missed. Even with a flashback, I have clients that will say, there's a part of me that wants the flashback to play just in the hopes that there's something that I'm missing in it that's going to help make it okay. Your brain automatically gets precision weighting and shifts it all the way toward the lessons in that bad memory, all the way toward the experience of that bad memory. You can't update it until you have an experience with it that is different. And you can't have an experience with it as different until I'm telling you, no, put your focus here. Watch those golden retrievers. Don't fall into that black hole. Come here, stay with me. We're going to ground. We're going to be here in the present moment. We have to be present for healing. In this approach, you have to be in this room for it. You have to be with me for it. And your experience has to be different than what it is when you're having a flashback, when you're ruminating, or when your brain is constructing a whole bunch of trauma predictions. Yeah.
Wow. So what's coming to mind is like every scene in a movie or a TV show that shows someone healing from a trauma is really the opposite of this, right? It's like, they keep going, they go back to the scene again and again. It's like, oh, now I see the thing. Now I see the face of the person. Now it resolves through.
And now you're at the punchline. And the punchline is that we don't have to do that. It is the same cultures. Again, families culture, neighborhoods are cultures, community mental health clinics are cultures. Right? Parts of the country are cultures. Social, ethnic, racial groups can be cultures. This broad nest of cultures. It is often the cultures that most traumatized us and wounded us that have given us rumination, that have taught us through media, through learning, through how you punish yourself. Right? That give us the crap food to eat. That give us, you know what I mean? It's the same cultures that wounded us that construct obstacles to healing. Right? So I'm looking at you, culture, for why? Because one of the big questions in trauma work is why life had to have been harder 20,000 years ago. had to have been harder than it is now. Why is trauma so darn sticky now? Cultures. Cultures. We're being gaslit constantly by the same cultures that wounded us. Which is why healing yourself may be one of the true revolutionary acts an individual can do and still keep their freedom. It's like you can heal yourself. Maybe one of the only things you can do as an act of like really bold, defiant will and agency.
Ooh, I think we got the title for this episode right there. That gave me some chills.
Yeah.
I'm having a thought. I have no idea if you want to follow it or have thoughts on it, but I'm very interested in, as someone who has been a victim of this culture for most of my life and gradually come to see that there are other options out there. This isn't the only way to be, and have leaned on Indigenous scholars, authors, storytellers. Is there something in the, like human cultures have existed for a long time? Is there something that we know or suspect in sort of more indigenous cultures where healing happened, where through through some structures or rituals or understandings or stories or beliefs, that this happened naturally and we didn't have to invent a profession to do it?
So you mentioned EMDR earlier. EMDR sounds weird, doesn't it? From our cultural intuition. We're going to what? We're going to activate a memory, slow down, be present, notice, and do this left-right stimulation. Well, a lot of us EMDR practitioners are like, wait a minute. What if humans, what if trauma was once a community problem? And there were communal rituals of reconciliation, right? That may have involved things like drumming. Do you know what I mean? It may have involved, drumming. It may have involved deep witnessing of each other. And at a time before God got put in the sky, we can assume that what was somatic in these rituals was probably sacred, meaning worthy of deep present-based attention and noticing. So what if the therapies that are transformational in little bitty rooms with drywall and fluorescent lighting are just a reenactment or a replaying or a recapturing of how humans may have healed before modernity, before before empire, before colonialism, before awfulness? I can't believe that we would have a brain that's able to heal so easily, and earlier cultures wouldn't have been able to tap into that. Right? So I think the things that have kept us stuck are cultural. The things that have kept us blind are cultural. So we know that how we think about things now can't be the only way that people have been able, to heal. So when you do healing with somebody, so you see this with Flash, and you see this with other ways too. There's something about it that feels old after you get past the you know what I mean? This we couldn't have discovered this in 1987, or we couldn't have discovered this in 2017. There's something about this that feels atavistic. Something about this that feels really, really, really ancient. And thank goodness we're discovering. So for me, with Flash, the moment I realized it was resolving memories, I'm like, oh, my goodness. Through all the bad moms, through all the bad men, through all the bad wars, through all the flu and epidemic weekends. Do you mean to tell me that healing is as easy as just taking a quick look at something and engaging and having a different experience right after that? Healing is that easy? You can't be, you got to be kidding me. And if it is that easy, we've got to teach people how to do it. We have to teach people how to do it. We got to teach people how to do it in a way that doesn't package kind of the worst of the, yeah. Which is ironic because I'm like using YouTube to like spread the word, and I'm using YouTube to, show people, help people heal. But we have to use tools that are available to us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love the irony of that, because when I first encountered your work, and it's changed over the years, with different tweaks and discernments. When I first encountered your work, you were talking about the calm scene exclusively. So something, and so I was working with a client of mine who's very spiritual, and he had a sense of the calm scene, what it should be. I don't know what it was, but I'm imagining something angelic or cosmic, or like an Alex Gray painting come to life on YouTube. And it wasn't quite working. And then I attended one of your live sessions. You talked about almost like a guilty pleasure video, and I used that language for him. And now he's watching sports, and it's there's something really lovely about the master's tools dismantling the master's house in our own minds. That the guilty pleasure, when deployed with an understanding of how the brain forms new memories and makes new predictions, is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And what that means is it's accessible, and Flash turns every resource, Flash turns a sandwich into an opportunity to heal.
Yeah.
Flash democratizes healing, right? It really does. And again, as much as it is, I think it is important that people with really complex trauma see a really good trauma-informed therapist that gets it, who can hold your nervous system, who can help you do this work in a safe and structured way. Humans need to heal. We don't have one single intractable problem that is going to get better until we do some healing as a species.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things this reminded me of in terms of potential and scope is like tremoring. Right. So, gosh, all of a sudden I'm blanking on the guy I interviewed who wrote the book on the trauma release. But his story was he was working in war-torn countries where he couldn't speak the language, and kind of getting hundreds or thousands of people to shake to get the trauma out of their bodies. And so this is something, equally potentially democratizing. And I'm curious, so I'm a coach, I'm not a therapist. I'm a student of psychology, but I don't have any clinical degrees. How would you advise me to use this, take it into the world so that I'm effective, generous, and responsible?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure about I'm very clear about what the boundaries and scope of practice of a therapist is. I'm not as clear about what the boundary and scope of practice a coach is.
Well, let's generalize even more to a school teacher, a parent, a manager, a human being who's not a licensed therapist. Right. To democratize this, we need to get it out there. How do you? So let's talk to my audience now, and and they don't know what it is yet. I think I'd like to spend a couple of minutes with you just describing it, and then we'll give them all the resources where they can go and learn it in depth for absolutely free. But what's your vision of how this goes out into the world responsibly?
Yeah, what I would say is, first, we need a plan and to do something different than what our default is. Okay? So it's fine with me that if you're having like a conflict with a partner, instead of, and if y'all like disengage, and instead of like ruminating about it and think, oh, that time they did this, that time they did that, and the other time they did that, and now you're just flooded with like all the awfulness. If you have a plan, right, where you instead go, wait a minute, what just happened? Right? Can I ground? Can I like reset my nervous system and ground really quickly? And then can I try to take a bite of what just happened at a time? Just a little bite of it. So I'm going to play this conversation and I'm going to just stop the moment I find a little bit of a sore spot. Okay? And I'm going to push it out of my awareness, and then I'm going to get up and I'm going to turn on my dance music and I'm going to dance for a little while. Okay?
Okay.
And then I'm going to play that memory again till I find the next sore spot. And then I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn on my dance music and I'm going to dance a little more. Do you know what I mean? So many of us have noticed that if you go kind of heavy-hearted to yoga, or if you go with like something on your mind, we have a sense by the end of that class that some aspect of that has shifted. Like the whole thing hasn't, but the thing that we like went into the class with has shifted.
Right.
Does that make sense? So what you've just done is you've done a round of flash.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you get the next bite and process the next piece in your yoga or in your dance or in your knitting or in your petting your dog or whatever it is, right? So one of the things I think Flash teaches us very, very clearly is that there's a lot of utility in trying to engage with a tiny piece of something and let that move through your nervous system before you digest the next piece, right? And again, we heal across prediction error. We heal across experiential mismatch. So again, you can heal while running. You can heal while hiking, right? You just need a structure to let things come into your mind different than how you by default let things come into your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So again, Flash turns any resource into a transformational trauma therapy that you can do self-administered. So people are like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do if they do this? What they're doing is worse. And doing Flash in a not great way is better than rumination in any kind of way, right? We have to stop trying to heal in ways that we've been gaslit internally, ways that we've been gaslit into believing might be productive. Rumination never, ever, 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 ever is it result. I've never ruminated my way out of a trauma. I've never had a flashback and been, that's the guy with the knife, like they do in the movies. In the movies, it's like you have the flashback. It's like, I see in the reflection of the mirror, the guy in the knife, and now it's better because I could prosecute. That doesn't happen. So I think this begins with the idea that healing and learning can be fun. Healing and learning are going to require present-based sensory awareness, and that's a hard sell for a lot of people for whom bad things happened in the present and for whom noticing and being present with things in the present moment can be triggering. But we have YouTube. Do you know what I mean? We have YouTube. We have, yeah.
Yeah. So that idea of fun, I moved to Spain 3 years ago and I'm trying to learn Spanish. And there's a way in which my default programming is like, well, the more effort I put in, the more I'm going to learn. And of course, it turns out that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
That there's some part of me that's trying to direct my brain, the organ that keeps my pH within, microscopic homeostatic limit. Like this brain is so smart. The part that I don't control, that I've never been able to identify with or connect. And it feels like, part of Flash is like trusting that part of the brain.
Yeah.
To like, if it's having fun, it's something good is happening.
Absolutely. And if it's having fun, you're probably here. Do you know what I mean? If you're having fun, that's a pretty good indicator that you're actually here, because here is what's generating the prediction error. It's what's generating the mismatch, right? So yeah, I can imagine, by the way, learning a language. How do we learn a language? We learn it across prediction error. Right? Everything our brain does, right? I mean, everything our brain does, all learning is across prediction error. So again, you don't want to learn a language by using the schema. This is hard. I'm just going to push into the hard. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a citizen of the U.S., it's very easy to go abroad and think, well, this is hard because everybody else in the world can speak 9 languages, but I can't.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot of default
Yeah.
blockages going on.
Yes. And language is cultural. And every experience we've ever had has cultural fingerprints and agendas on it. Right? So, of course, many of our schemas, of course, many of our predictions are culturally shaped expectations. Yeah, about what we think. Again, if your brain, if the generative model of yourself in the world is made from every experience you have, we don't have any experiences completely immune of the cultures that we find ourselves. Language is a cultural artifact. It's all implicated and tainted. Yeah.
Right, right. I remember when I first learned about ego depletion,
Yeah.
and this very, very strongly validated idea that the more decision fatigue, the more you struggle for something, the less willpower you have left for other things. And then I found this whole body of literature that that they don't find that phenomenon in cultures that don't believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great example. Great example. And again, science is amazing. It's wonderful. It's great. But science is also a cultural artifact because it's based on language and assumptions and populations that we're testing. And are those populations, are the populations skewing what we're finding? Yeah, yeah. So again, we have a brain that seems to be organized around model, prediction error, and its loose version of attention. And therapy and coaching and teachers and every single thing needs to understand that that's the brain we have. And if that's the brain we have, we need to make sure that what we're doing works with that brain, not the brain that we've been told we had, or the brain that we assumed that we had, or the brain that industry wants us to believe we have, or...
Right. So we're at the end of the hour. I hope we've described it enough for people to have a sense of what's going on, even though we didn't get to the step-by-step details. But I would love for you to kind of invite my listeners to, like, if they're interested, which I imagine many of them will be. Like, this isn't a huge time investment to learn enough to be able to start using this. What's the invitation for folks to find out more, to start getting involved, to add this arrow to their quiver?
Yeah. So it's hard for me to tell people just in the world, start doing Flash without me having a means to teach them this. So a lot of what my focus has been teaching therapists. And again, one of the things I'm doing here in Cleveland in the next month is starting a nonprofit research to really research from a predictive processing lens, with a research Flash, research EMDR. Doing some really, really cool things. So the take-home message, at least now, until I have concrete interventions to give people, things that these are kind of things. The take-home message is, number one, you need to find something to do other than ruminating. And I know that feels like I'm saying flap your arms and fly up out of your armchair. That it's hard to do. But we've got to stop reinforcing the difficult learning that we've had over and over and over. And one of the things I will say, and it comes from Predictive Mind, it comes from Andy Clark, it comes from this, is that I just want people to know that you can heal. You can heal. Absolutely you can heal. But in order to heal, you need to remember that the trauma parts of learning aren't meant to be changed without having the right type of sensory disconfirmation. So you're going to have to go against your long-term survival strategies and find a way to do something weird. You're going to have to find a way to do something that isn't endlessly cathartic. Do you know what I mean? That isn't endlessly shame-based, that isn't endlessly neocortex, talk. There are trauma-focused yoga programs everywhere. There's lots and lots of trauma-focused mindfulness things that you can start with and do. But I think we're going to figure this out. I just don't have a 3-minute, hey, do this and you can heal today program.
Sure. You do have a website and you do have a YouTube channel and you do offer trainings that anyone can sign up for. Can you let people know how to find those?
So the trainings that I offer are primarily for professionals, right? They're primarily for people that work directly with other people. My YouTube channels are online. I hear from people all the time who are not therapists who find it very, very helpful and affirming. And I mean, the most common feedback is, "Oh my goodness, I feel seen." Like I feel like you get the complexity that I have, and So YouTube, yeah.
Okay, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But what's the channel?
The channel's EMDR Tom.
EMDR Tom, TOM.
On YouTube, yep.
Okay, great.
All one word, yep.
Okay. Great, yeah, so I think that's a fantastic place for people to start.
Yeah.
So I'm rooting for resources for people to learn how to heal themselves, how to use this.
Then let's meet, let's talk about that. Let's develop that. Let's do that.
Okay.
As you do it, let me know how I can help.
Okay.
Right? Let me know how I can help. Let's do part B of the conversation.
Fantastic. All right.
Yes. Because if this, I can't come and say this is an easy, remarkable way to heal and then not help people do that.
Right.
That feels inherently incomplete.
Yeah. Well, you could take the model of I'm going to charge $5,000 an hour and
no. Oh no. Gate kept therapies are not what I'm up to.
Right.
No.
So, yeah. Yeah. So, Tom, thank you so much for the work you're doing in the world, for the generosity with which you're sharing it and explaining it, and for taking the time to talk to me and my crowd today.
Awesome. Thank you. And let's do it again soon.
I would love that. I'm going to stop the recording. Maybe we could hang on for a minute to say a private goodbye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap. You can find the show notes with links to the stuff we talked about at plantyourself.com/630. So it's been a while. I have taken a break from weekly podcast recordings, as you may have noticed. And I think I'm going to get back into kind of a bi-weekly or every 2 week. I can't remember if bi-weekly is twice a week or every 2 weeks, fortnightly publishing schedule. There's a lot of people I want to talk about, and I'm feeling renewed energy to share this healing, trauma healing work, especially as it relates to what's going on in the world these days, because I think there's a powerful link, and I'm exploring it more in my own work with leaders, with organizations as well, and starting to, I won't lie, there's been a period of kind of going, despair, depression, all the Epstein revelations have really kind of hit me and made me question a lot of what I thought I knew and believed about the world and what I was supposed to be doing in it. And after a couple months of wallowing, I'm beginning to put myself back together and develop some real energy around here's what I've got to contribute and here's where I think we need to move to create a more loving world. Movement news. Still working out. I've got a couple of Ultimate Frisbee tournaments coming up. One in Alicante in a week and a half. Looking forward to that. We may not have a ton of players, so I may have to run more than I would actually like. But the other thing I've added, and I've done it once, but I'm starting to build up the schedule for it. I'm going to go do it today as well, is rucking. And if you haven't heard of that, rucking is just like walking with a rucksack, which is I guess a European term for a backpack, but it's not, your little computer bag or a fancy Osprey day pack. These are like heavy duty, like military hiking backpacks that are filled with weights. And the idea is, so I've been a runner for a long time, and my knee's been bothering me and ankles, and running has not been my friend lately. And as a result, I haven't done as much movement and cardio as I would like. And rucking is walking, but with weights, and typically weights in a backpack so that it kind of forces my posture upright against, the pull of the computer turtling. So gives me good posture and allows me to walk at a natural pace without pounding, without running, and still get a cardio workout. So right now I'm just loading water bottles into a backpack. It's not perfect. The weight is a little bit low down my spine. The weight from the backpack is far away relatively from my spine. So I'm looking at other alternatives to make it more comfortable and safer, but I'm very excited about adding it to my movement routine. That's about it for me. Wishing you all a great week, and as always, be well, my friends.